The story of the Native American is one that is deeply ingrained within the history of the United States, and one that is, like so many other histories, riddled with accounts of genocide, slavery, and forced assimilation. Since its earliest stages, the United States has frequently been at odds with its indigenous peoples, with early European settlers viewing natives as savage and uncivilized. Acre by acre, America's native people were stripped of their land and heritage and forced to adopt the culture and traditions of the white Americans. Over the decades, as white settlers invaded more and more land and claimed it as their own, native peoples were forced to live in areas of land that were meant to contain natives and help them to assimilate to the ways of the white men. In 1830, President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act, in which the U.S. government divided land in the western U.S. and allocated it to the natives in exchange for the over 25 million acres that had been taken from them. The land that was designated as a new Indian Territory is what we now call Oklahoma. However, as settlers ventured further west, they ran out of land to relocate the natives to. Their solution was to instead educate the natives in the ways of the civilized white Americans. The Indian Appropriation Act followed the Indian Removal Act 2 decades later in 1851, creating the Indian reservation system in which natives were forced to attend boarding school to become more educated and civilized. The people who supported the assimilation of the natives into white culture were called assimilationists. Natives were forced to change their names, speak English, wear white man's clothes, and give up their spiritual traditions and beliefs in exchange for Christianity. Boarding schools were very strict and often punished students for using their native tongue or engaging in native traditions or ceremonies. Their long hair was severed and trimmed to the popular hairstyles of the day, and the students were given uniforms that more closely matched those of the mainstream American clothing. While the schools also functioned as day schools for Native children, a vast majority of Native children were required to move away from their homes and families in order to attend, and attendance was not a request. Some parents sent their children away peacefully. Others, however, refused to send their children off, aware of the intent to destroy their heritage and way of life. Many parents also feared the worst for their children, with boarding schools being heavily and easily affected by diseases such as tuberculosis. Many assimilationists felt that keeping the boarding schools on the reservations was not effective in stripping away the indigenous traditions. They felt that in order to completely eradicate the heritage and culture of the Native Americans, these boarding schools must be moved off the reservations and away from their way of life. The first of these off-reservation boarding schools was Carlisle Indian School. The school was established in 1879 by American Army officer Richard H. Pratt in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Pratt's aim was to completely remove any and all traces of tribal influence and to turn Native Americans into acceptable members of white society. Pratt's motto: "Kill the Indian, save the man." Pratt tried to accomplish his vision by isolating Native children from their heritage, placing them with white families, and rewarding them when they did not speak their native language. Other boarding schools preferred punishment to reward, however, either confining children, withholding rations, or even physically punishing students who did not adhere to the rules. However, not every aspect of boarding school was negative. Students at the schools learned domestic skills such as cooking, sewing, and budgeting, among other things. They were also educated in math and sciences, along with trade skills such as carpentry and printing. As years progressed and attitudes changed, there came a growing concern for the state of education within the Indian reservations, which were marred by poverty and an insufficient and outdated education system due to previous federal policies. In 1934, Congress enacted the Indian Reorganization Deal, also known as the Indian New Deal. Contrary to the previous acts, This New Deal aimed to grant the Native American nations more autonomy and to revive the cultural and traditional ways of life that had suffered. Various other laws and acts have been implemented to repair the damage of the past and to revive and revitalize Native American culture by funding education and community. However, the impacts of the Indian boarding school persist even today.